Hi, my name is Matthew, and this is my Chapter 4 Project Manager reading. So, in this chapter, we went over two sections, the risk management section and the scheduling section. So, for risk management, the subsection, so it went over like basically how to deal with risk in a project because that's a very big thing. You never, like, you want to know what the risks are and what could come up so that you can be prepared for anything wrong happening. So we started off with identifying the risks. So basically, identify the risks and then assess their impact. You got to make a list of all that can go wrong so that you're not blindsided later. Uh, you first make all the potential risks, so that could be financial resources, team strength, suppliers, etc. And they got to prioritize the list, which is from high, medium to low. This is basically you got to make a list of everything, any type of risk that's in your um, in your project. So basically, for financial resources is money. For team strength is if you have a team member that's not as strong as the others, you need to account for that. Suppliers is knowing your suppliers and your stakeholders also, and then etc. So then after you identify the risk, you assess the risk. So this is impact times probability equals the actual risk. What is the impact of the risk? So that's a 5 to 2 scale. One would be that it's not, there's no impact of the risk, meaning it's not a risk. So a 5 would be worst case scenario, and then a 2 would be minimal impact. I don't know why it's not 5 to 1 on the scale. That's just what they said in the book. So I assume 1 would be no risk. What is the probability of the risk? This is a 5 to 1 scale, so 5 would be a high likelihood that it would happen, and 1 would be a slight possibility that it could happen under unusual conditions. So basically, at the highest, our risk could be 25. That would be the actual risk. So that would be the impact times the probability if they were both 5. So that risk could be a high priority rather than one that's like 5 times 1, which would be 5. And then you multiply the numbers to get the actual risk. Risk 12 or higher take time to think through them and identify how to reduce the risk. So those are risk are ones that like, hey, like this could happen or this is an awful scenario that we want to basically if this happens, we need to know what to do or we need to avoid it as all cost. So next, it's tame the risk, so a thinking tool to help you filter through strategies to minimize your risk. Four options of managing risk is transfer the risk, accept the risk, mitigate the risk, or eliminate the risk. These are just four things you can do to tame a risk. Communication is 90% of the project success, so document the risk and risk management. Basically, this is the whole section on risk management. Just, hey, here are the risks. Basically, see how the risk will affect us, assess the risk, like what the likelihood of it in the worst case scenario, and then tame that risk. Find a way to basically eliminate it, mitigate it, accept it, or transfer it. And basically, communication is a big thing. You want to have communication. So the next part was scheduling. Um, this was all about scheduling your project. So the schedule is a roadmap. It contains all tasks and milestones needed to complete the project. To do this, you develop the work breakdown schedule, which is a WBS. In that, you make a list of project deliverables and components that go into each deliverable. By that, you make mind maps, which allow you to come up with ideas without worrying about putting them in order. Make a mind map of all the deliverables that you have. There's a linear list, which is making a list of all activities required to complete each component. And then the post-it note method, I meant to put note, not method, which is basically give a team member a post-it note for each activity and write down on the note a list. And basically, you look at what they have written and you look at duplicates, and if there are duplicates, that means that activity is of high priority. Then there's sequence activities, which decide which activities must be done before, at the same time, or after another task. So these are dependencies, which a task is dependent on another task, which the type of dependencies are first to start, which means the sequential task, which means that you must finish the first task before starting the next. Start to start is the start of one task triggers another, and then finish to finish is some task can't be finished until another one is finished. So these are just three types of dependencies that the book gave us. And then you need to identify the project team. So who is going to do what? The goal defines the team. Basically, common mistake is assign whoever is available instead of finding the right people. This means like just because you have a person, just like hey, he's going to do this, when you should actually find the right person to make sure your project works the best it could. A second mistake is a lack of clear project schedule. Basically, like, all right, guys, this is what we're gonna do, but not making it clear enough for everyone so that there's no hard deadlines or anything. Estimate duration of each task. Work does not equal duration. Work is time needed to accomplish a task. Duration is time needed to get work done. Time is constraint and can sink a project. Find a sweet spot and be accurate with duration. Basically, that time is valuable and work is valuable. So you need to know when you have to do stuff, and basically that work does not equal the duration, and that the duration is just the time that is needed to get work done. The sweet spot, and to be accurate with duration, you draw on your own experiences. You can ask a reference, give advice from an outside expert, use the PERT formula to figure out how long each task will take. And then you got to identify the critical path. This is the longest way to get from the beginning up to the end of the project, and the earliest and the latest you can start and end each task without making the project longer. These have no flexibility, uh, no estimated duration of the finish to start relationship, accurately schedule. Basically, this is hey, this is the path that we could take. This is also a path that we might not want to take. Critical path is usually like the longest. Doesn't usually mean the hardest, but it does mean the longest, meaning that this will take us the most time if we take this path. Create a project budget was the last thing I went over, which is basically external and internal expenses. External expenses is basically bills from outside suppliers that we take, and then internal expenses is time that you have allotted to each core team member. And that was the reading. Thank you.